Hello, this is Dr. Garrett Castleberry, Program Director for Communication, Media, and Ethics here at Mid-America Christian University. And I'm here with our Week 2 video Q&A discussion. And we are continuing our asynchronous dialogue for the communication course, public relations, advertising, and brand management. We worked through 3 different texts in this short course, and we are looking at the synergies between these texts and also finding points along the way of question and critique so that we can gain deeper insights into this area of mass communication and media studies. Okay, let me jump right in with a few questions from John, and we will work through questions as quickly as we can. Try to keep my responses on my end as brief as possible. Not that I want to be brief, not that you want to be brief, but we'll just let the stats dictate when and where and how to be close on that. And let's see. All right, John has a question from Blakemans, integrated marketing communication, chapters. Creative strategy to from idea to implementation. And this book did just shift to a new edition. And thank you very much, Roman and Littlefield, for sending me a copy to review. However, I haven't had time to fully assess it yet, and certainly we haven't had time to integrate it. But we're working from this previous edition, and maybe that's helping us in the pocketbook. John asks, looking at chapter 6. Is it possible that as the years go by, more and more words and phrases will be added to the list of, quote, suggestive words and phrases that help create attention-grabbing headlines, end quote? And that's from page 87 of Blakemans' IMC book. If I can just find 87 real quick, give us a couple of samples of what John is talking about. Okay, we have this figure box, and box 6.1, suggestive words that we come across in advertising. And many of these should sound familiar to us all. You, free, discover, new, love, now, how to, sales, bargain, quick, easy, save, guarantee, results, safety. Oh, great list, all right? And for sure, the types of, since words equal language, and language is but a symbol system, these are definitely symbols in our culture that we are familiar with, perhaps as much or more due to advertising and the way they are displayed and used to train us and orient us. So John's asking, will we add more words and phrases as time goes? Naturally, I think we can assume that, and we can logically deduce shifts will occur, additions will be had, and perhaps we're already seeing this, and maybe even in alternative forms. So, for example, look at the way language shifts online, and not just in linguistic terms, but also the visual cues. Think about images, okay, memes or GIFs, and how these are coming to represent certain communication, certain shared communication between people, organizations, and so on. But just thinking about a couple of terms and how they start to take on additional meanings or gain new circulations. Something that came to mind, the word epic, sort of describing something as epic, using it as, something being epic, epic fail even, right? It's reverse. There's a bit of millennial language to that, right? Millennials appropriating it for certain types of cultural slang or jargon, but of course the ultimate classical literary term of genre, storytelling, the epic, and so we refashion the old as new. Another term, bay, right? The way that this is getting used as a sort of exchange system for symbols and meaning and culture is something to think about. And even the hashtag symbol itself, right, which previously stood as something else when it existed as part of the keypad of a traditional telephone, but now it functions as so much more, not only as, say, a hashtag to archive things on a Twitter or Instagram, but also to announce, right? To use the term hashtag. To hashtag something is to define it in a certain way, to almost give it, there can be an irony associated with it that could be humorous. So we can find different uses there. 163, chapter 11, what makes radio advertising so great? In that section, does a memorable voice help in the imaginative impact of the message? Okay, and so are we asking, could a memorable voice be one of these categories, right? Specifically, the imaginative impact category. It could, and there used to be this cabal of recognizable voices in mass media, in entertainment. You think about maybe the voice of a Walter Cronkite, who could be associated with television, but also even radio. These types of the voice of a generation. All right, the people with distinguishing intonation, incantation rather, to their speaking style, their articulate voice, phrasing, and so on. And so, yes. Also, if we think about advertising or even the world of voiceover work, all right, there's still, it's a relatively small community of the elite voice talent in children's animated programming. Tend to, if one person's been on one major show, they likely have been on, it's not an overstatement to say, a dozen other programs, 24 other shows, all right? And so a lot of that voice talent they carry on for decades because it's their voice that they perform the labor, and so perhaps their body, right, their physical presence or their visual presence is less prominent. They in essence are de-aged by the impact of being audio exclusive talent. Something to think about. We could expand that at another time. Does the list of, quote, what to consider when designing for radio, end quote, seem comparable to writing a speech? All right, so we're looking at page 167 of Blakeman. This is where John's question comes from. And there is a section on what to consider when designing for radio, and about 10 talking points. And I went through these talking points, wanted to take that serious. I thought John, his papers just fall here and there, some raining papers. I think John brings up an excellent point, in that I found many parallels into some of these categories versus some speech categories. So one of the categories, for example, reads, the message must tune the listener in. Get the listener's attention quickly, but be sure to use the tone of voice throughout the IMC campaign. This is an attention grabber, right? A teaser. As we say, a hook. The Speech 101. This is what we teach, that a sound symmetrical speech would start with. Let the listener know right away the product name and consumer benefit. Oh, sounds like a thesis. As well as something else we talk about doing early in speeches, defining your key terms, okay? So it goes on and on. I saw a through line, absolutely agree with your assessment there, and think there's a lot of value to that list on 167, and clearly it's matching up with what we think about when crafting speech form. Some of it, when we're talking about product, we're talking about keywords. When we're referring to copy, creating copy in advance, okay, copywriting, this is outlining, right? Creating your outline your speech in advance. What is the skeleton? Visual, when it talks about visual control, this made me think of word choice and how every word we use is important and should matter. We shouldn't just be filling a speech or filling a commercial with empty words to take up that time space. Everything should be deliberate and strategic, especially the shorter the message. Style, when there's mention of style, this makes me think of Berger emphasizes we should write like people speak. Okay, and so audio ads, not unlike speeches, should be more vernacular. Okay, they should sound more conversational, extemporaneous perhaps, more conversational as opposed to sort of literary. Okay, so guess what, folks? We write differently than we speak, and just like we should write differently than we text, and so on. These are different modes of communication, and so we have different styles to fit these. All right, so the list goes on. Tone, and others. So great point about that category in chapter 11, John. Okay, looking at Berger's ads, fads, and consumer culture. If being caught up in consumer things, as Berger says, is a means of, quote, validating themselves on page 147, is this one of the reasons most people live beyond their means in our society? Well, yes. Ads encourage us to keep buying, okay, to stay current, and they intend to give us an impression of feeling left out if we don't own, have, purchase, or consume a thing or things continuously, right? The next go round, and so on. We are meant to feel a need to, a desire, keyword, to practice that consumer power. And there's a lot of theoretical directions I could take for those of you that are real into those analytic directions about advertisements. Let's see. Okay, let me skip to a question about chapter 3 real quick, and we'll jump here. The use of a simile or a metaphor seems to be growing in our society. Can we attribute this to changing society or increase of audiences, which are made of different generations? We can attribute growth patterns with similes or metaphors or colorful language or what have you to, I mean, first and foremost, and hence the books we study and read, and even in courses like this to become kind of media literate, is we can attribute this to the proliferation of popular culture. Once again, and we noted this in previous classes, popular culture itself is a language set. Okay, this is an oftentimes it's heavy, extreme use of signs and symbols, deep meanings that are both overt and covert, as we would say, and embedded with layers, right? They can even have contradicting meanings, but audiences are sometimes aware of both, right? Intended and contradictory meanings, right? Oppositional meanings of the same term. So yeah, popular culture can be a messy area, and certainly advertising is too. Okay, speaking of Danesi, we look at a couple of chapters from the popular culture text, and John comments that the radio timeline, page 127, shows the journey of radio and the changes that have been made. Can we see some similarities also in television and the internet? Absolutely. Different mediums of mass communication share some basic cyclical similarities, right? Tech innovations that take place, popularity, regulations or regulatory changes, practices of adoption, sort of, as consumer groups adopt certain mediums and technologies or shift. Okay, we see these things happen in cycles and across multiple mass mediums. But if radio is primarily a medium that people listen to in automobiles and workplaces, page 132, can we presume radio will continue to be the medium in this capacity for several years to come? We have other things at home that keep us busy, so yes, these patterns are routinized into life, and they happen to even fall into generational schedules now, we might suggest, like school and church and restaurants, and so we do see these patterns of which mass communication plays a role.